I tend to think anytime we get past the 3-team trade, that's, nonsense people dream up in video games and trade machines. Like, it's pretty rare we get, even a regular 2-team trade is fairly rare. A 3-team trade is even more rare. Anything beyond that, there's about one, maybe a year of those that we get, and that's probably even a little on the high side. So I think what will happen is, if need be, Miami will figure out a way to get Tyler Hero off to a third team that really values him and really has a need and says, all right, we really kind of like Tyler Hero, who, unfortunately, I think too much of the narrative is with Tyler Hero's not good. He stinks. And I think people are going there because Portland doesn't want him. Well, Portland doesn't want him because they're loaded with guards that are young that they want to play. And they don't want to take him on, block one of their guards, plus his, big contract. So it's not that he's a bad player. They just don't want to be there. So that's kind of where we're at with this situation. So I think we're kind of, here where, all right, let's kind of, move it forward. Let's get a third team in there that wants Hero. They'll give assets and young players a pick. Those will get rerouted to Portland, and off we go. Yeah, it's interesting. Daryl Morey, part of what his stated goals are is he either wants players back who can keep them a contender or enough draft picks back that he can then flip for players that will keep them a contender while also preserving cap space. And as I wrote for Spot Track this week, good luck. Like, achieving all of those things, like, that's not going to happen, right? Like it's rare to get, somebody who can keep you a contender and keep cap flexibility. So I think what we're really looking at here is with them is he's eventually going to have to pick a path. And if the path is, all right, we're going to take back some talent and try to move forward, then they can do that. They could probably stay a pretty good team and go, because you've got a lot of good pieces in place. It's just going to be, where do you go? If you can't do that and he really wants to have this, 50, 60, 70 million in cap space this summer, then you're probably going to have to take less of a package back now. And then we're going to find out, how does the big fella feel about that? Is he like, well, wait a minute, we're kind of not punting on a year, but are we saying like, well, let's kind of pause for a year? I don't know that he's going to be open to that idea.
It can buy me a lot of things that make me happy, though, right? Like, as you pointed out, nobody on a yacht has ever frowned. That's just reality. Now, this whole thing's interesting, right? Because you lose Shohei as a pitcher, but we saw what Shohei can do, but we don't know if Shohei's going to be able to do that coming back off this injury. The good news is I had somebody on my show today that I was talking to about this, and the good news is this injury is far and away not the worst thing that can happen to a pitcher. This is an injury that is caused by repetition, by repeated use of the little ligament that runs on the inside of the elbow. And there is, from my understanding, I am not a doctor, nor did I stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. There is a minor possibility that Shohei could go through this, come back from this, and not even require surgery. I mean, this honestly could be, it would be a lot of rest, but it could be something that is capable of taking care of itself if it was not a full-on tear or separation of the UCL. So, again, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I don't want to wager a guess. I didn't go to med school. I was way too dumb for that. But I can read Wikipedia, and it sounds to me like there's a chance he might be able to come back as a pitcher. Either way, you got to think that the contract number's down, right? Because if this is something that is going to take away from his ability as a pitcher, the reason Shohei was looking at potentially a $600 million contract is because he is a guy who can lead MLB in home runs, and he's a guy who can also go out there and win Cy Youngs. And if one of those two things is taken away from him, now he's just a really great hitter, but there's a lot of really great hitters. So, this is probably, and I mean this, it's going to sound like I'm going over the top, like hyperbole here, but this really could be the most expensive injury in the history of sports, sincerely.
I lean New Mexico State, but I played the over in this game. Actually, I think this game is going to be kind of a high-scoring affair. I project this game like 50.5, so I think you're going to see points in this one. I think these numbers being a little anchored, and this has been ticking up over the summer, open like 42.5, 43. 45 is a key number, so that's the stopping point for me. I think this number is being anchored in what happened last year in the game, 23-13 New Mexico State. New Mexico State had a really good defense last year, especially for them, was the real impetus for their bowl run last year, like a nationally average defense, which like for them and against a really bad UMass team, like that's huge. they're bottom 15 in returning production. They return less than half of that. They're counting on a lot of transfers. So I think you're going to see a big change here for this New Mexico State team. And you look at UMass, they got Tyson Fomachan, former Clemson recruit, like huge guy, 6'4", 220, few Power 5 transfers at receiver. I think you're going to see a few more points in this one. You really don't need much to get over 45. Not to mention, it's going to be hot as hell in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Maybe defense gets tired in the second half. I took over here. I think, you're going to see this game get into the 50s. I think, like, total 50. I think both teams could definitely string together 3-4 touchdown drives.
Talking to Reed Wallach, BetMGM tonight. I want to squeeze in one last game before we get in the futures market with you. Notre Dame's a 20.5-point favorite against Navy. It's like right below that key number. It's a kind of a tough spot here. Do you have a play in this aside that you like?
Yeah, Navy catching 3 touchdowns. I obviously get the 21 if you can. It's been appearing and going away, so you might have to be on the screen at the right time. I still like 20.5. I know that's probably bad advice because 3 touchdowns, but I think Navy's going to cover. Look at last year, 35-32 Notre Dame. I think that this number is artificially inflated because they got Sam Hartman. There's also a first-time play caller in Gerard Parker. Hartman changing schemes. Dublin, it's going to be crappy weather all day anyway. Navy plays tough as an underdog anyway. I think this number is artificially inflated. I don't think Notre Dame has much of a reason. Their bye isn't until October anyway. I don't think there's much of a reason for them to run up the score. I think Navy keeps this one close.
And I don't know if this is still the case. Justin Fields was the biggest liability for BetMGM for MVP for the NFL season.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with everything you said about Justin Fields, the offensive side of the ball. They need to figure out, hey, do we upgrade at guard and tackle with Nate Davis and Darnell Wright? Because the offensive line gave up over 52 sacks last season. Mm-hmm. As good as he is with his legs, you need to protect him if you want to evaluate him as a passer. I think, big picture, best case scenario, they figure out, hey, we are a little bit better defensively because last year they were a nightmare. And when you think Chicago Bears football, you think defense. The 85 Bears or Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs. You don't really think, Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson, Kyler Gordon. But if that secondary can improve and, they spent a lot of money at the inside linebacker position with Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. But if those guys actually work out and the defense could be top 20, Bears could win 9-10 games.
It's a lot of parts that have to come together, but there's at least something there. It does feel like the team's at least finally taken a step forward. From year 1 to year 2, it didn't feel that way.
They have a lot of money to spend, dude.
Yeah. And that's, what it does.
That's why
it helps to have money to spend on a team.
Last night or 2 nights ago, whatever, when we were talking Jonathan Taylor, I was like, everything nice I've said about Ryan Poles the last 2 years, I'll take back if they trade for a running back. But Jonathan Taylor is only 24, and they need explosive playmakers. And I like what they have in Khalil Herbert, but imagine having Jonathan Taylor, DJ Moore, Justin Fields. Then that becomes a really scary offense. So who knows? They got a bunch of money to spend. I just wouldn't want to trade away a bunch of draft capital if I'm the Bears because you still got a lot of needs on the defensive side of the ball, and you could use probably another lineman as well.